Well, hello everybody joining our live. Um, yeah, let me send an invitation to our creators. Let's see, Yad and Sky. Yes, hello, welcome. Great to see you all. It's Wednesday, that means it's our weekly live. Today's topic, we will be discussing different programming languages for different uses. Yeah, oh, we're just waiting for our creators. I sent an invitation out already. It was just a matter of, yeah, waiting a few seconds. Oh, here you go. Hello, Sky.
Hi, how are you?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I still didn't add the right title.
Oh,
I somehow, I just couldn't. I feel great. However, we're still waiting for Ziad. He's going to be here in a sec. Yeah, there you go.
hi.
Hey guys, how's it
Hello.
going?
Good. How are you doing?
Going.
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. Excited to get started with the live stream.
That's nice. So yeah, today's topic it's yeah the different programming languages and their different uses. We are here every Wednesday, by the way, same at 10:30 Pacific time. And yeah, let's get in straight into it. So the first question for today is what are some popular programming languages used for web development? Sky, would you like to go first?
Yeah, so popular programming languages, I mean, it just depends. I'm sure we'll get into everything. It just depends on kind of what you're building or what you want to make. But I think the top three most popular languages for like a really long time is something like Python, Java, and C or JavaScript, something like that. I know there's a chart and it kind of changes every year depending on what's coming out. I'm sure with all the AI coming out, Python's going to be like a huge language that people are going to be learning. But yeah, my favorite is Java.
Yeah, your favorite is Java. Most people like I heard so many horror stories with that programming language. Like I've never heard that. I don't know, Ziad. What do you have
Yeah.
anything to add?
Yeah. I think in terms of popularity, you have like JavaScript and Java and Python are like consistently ranked pretty high. Especially JavaScript because it has like such a large community. Um, but yeah, there's some like horror type languages. Like I don't know if C is up there for software engineers. I know it's like very like hardware and embedded engineers. But I'd be scared, yeah, like you're saying, if C was kind of like up there or like any of those kind of very low level type of languages. But yeah, I think it's like JavaScript is definitely the most used in terms of web development, and then on as like backend and stuff like that and infrastructure, you might have like Python and Java, I would say, are probably the most popular. But I know every company at this point uses JavaScript for like at least one of their use cases.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's really popular. I think just globally, there's a pretty large community with JavaScript. So yeah, if I think if you want to break into tech, learning JavaScript definitely will make the process a bit easier.
Hmm.
Okay, so our next question, it's a bit warm in here. Yeah, I don't know, it's really warm today. So yeah, which programming languages are commonly used for data analysis and scientific computing?
I think this one is actually R because there's a lot of data scientists that use R for like yeah, like data analysis or data science because it's really good with manipulating data. I've only used R like a handful of times because I'm not really in data science, but I know that it's definitely a very popular language for that kind of realm. It's kind of funny because like a lot of software engineers usually refer to R as like one of the worst programming languages, but it does have its use cases. Um, yeah, it does have its use cases. And I know Python is also used for like some machine learning and data science type of stuff. But I think R is definitely high on that list.
Yeah. Yeah, I've worked with R as well, and you're right, it is terrible. It's, I don't know, it's terrible. There's no other way to put it. Sky, do you have anything to add?
I agree. I think there's like a lot of maybe there's like some beef between Python and R people because I know some people are really strong, like they love R and they don't like Python, and then I feel like people who like Python maybe probably don't like R. But yeah, I feel like I've seen the tension between R people and Python people online.
Yeah, I think it's best to just learn both. I think it's if you take R and Python and you just know both languages, I feel like that goes a really long way. But that's just my opinion. Maybe in the chat, let's see. Hi, I'm a junior developer. I need an advice to get work. Um, does anyone have an advice for the chat? The question.
Junior front-end developer, any advice to get work? Yeah, the market's pretty tough right now. Honestly, like it tends to be like the volume of applications that you submit that kind of determines like how many responses that you'll get. Like I think the percentage of like the response rate these days has gone lower. Like you used to be able to apply to 10 jobs and you'll probably hear from like one of them about something. Now it's like maybe 20 jobs or 30 jobs. But that just still means you just have to like apply like crazy and do the extra step in terms of like tailoring your resume, writing cover letters and stuff like that. So treat every job like very, very importantly in terms of making sure your resume aligns with the job description, reaching out to a recruiter maybe at that company, stuff like that.
Great, thank you for the answer. For everyone joining, we are discussing the different programming languages and their uses. Drop a follow if you haven't. Go check out our content. We have yeah, a wide variety of content to keep you entertained. Okay, so the next question is which programming languages are beginner friendly for those starting their coding journey? I can say something about this. I always recommend people to start off with like the basic web development languages because you are able to see what you are doing. So when you write a line of code and you hit run, you basically get like what you run appears on the screen. And I think it's really important that you are like visually learning, especially in web development. Like when you start doing backend development, you have less of that. But yeah, definitely the basic web development languages, which are HTML, CSS. Most of the time, the programming language people use for web development is JavaScript because, as we discussed earlier, it is one of the most popular languages. But you can learn other languages, like you can go with any other programming language really. It's just what's like in most demand in the market. And yeah, at that moment you're better at the moment you're better off with a language like Python. Ziad, Sky, do you have anything else you would like to add to what I just said?
I
Um,
agree with like HTML and CSS. That was the like the first. I know people don't call them like languages per se, but those are the first languages that I worked with, just to see if I was like interested in if like coding was going to be something that I was going to be able to sustain or really enjoy. And then after, but I feel like I knew once I started using like HTML and CSS, just like working like on the computer. I mean, it's still kind of the same format. You're still trying to think like, okay, how is the computer gonna think? So I feel like it gives you like a good basis. And then, like you said, it shows you immediately what your changes have made like on the screen. I feel like when you're coding in like object oriented programming, you don't really visualize like the loops. Like you can't see like how many times something looped or things like that. So it definitely like is satisfying to see things change on your screen.
Yeah.
And I know Python is super popular to start with. I went to Python after I did HTML and like CSS. Um, and then I did a little bit of Python and I was like, okay, I for sure want to do this. So then I started at a university and they had us start in Java. And it was very hard going from the little bit of knowledge that I had from Python to Java because I feel like Python does so much for you. So I'm like split on this debate, but I feel like people should start with Java. But I feel like that's an unpopular opinion. I know a lot of people say Python, but I just feel like it would to put the hard work up front would save you time switching to other languages later. Whereas I
Yeah.
didn't really like going from Python to lower level languages.
Yeah.
It's my
Yeah,
opinion.
I mean, I actually agree with Sky. Like, I learned Java as my first like programming language
Yeah,
after like HTML and CSS. What's up?
you guys are crazy. I could never, ever. Yeah.
The thing is, what helped me with it and why I would still recommend it to others is that it really teaches you the fundamentals of object-oriented programming languages, which I think it's more of like it's not just like the syntax, it's more of like a way of how you think about programming in general, and I think that's like why it was helpful. Like for example, when you switch to JavaScript or TypeScript, it's like even though it's not as object oriented as Java, when you are like thinking from that framework, it's like, okay, like how can I create like a class or how can I create an interface or something like that to solve this problem? I think that you end up writing like much better code in the long run, and you're not really going to get to that way of thinking until you learn Java, because Java like it basically only lets you solve problems using classes and interfaces and stuff. So I think it's a really good starting language from that perspective, and it's probably like the
Right.
easiest fully object-oriented programming language to learn as an alternative to like C++ plus plus and stuff like that.
Like even Python will just say, I think the syntax is just like print, and then you just, say what you want in like quotation marks or something. But when you learn that, you think, oh, I can just write print, and the computer knows like, oh, print something. But then when you do it in Java, you have to do like system.out.print and then do whatever. And it teaches you that like, oh, a system, dot out dot print is like a method that you're calling from this other class that's already created in the language. So it kind of shows you like the computer's not doing magic. Like it doesn't actually know what print means. It's calling from like these levels of code and syntax that's like embedded in the language. So yeah, I agree with you. I feel like it really tells you like exactly what you have to do to communicate to the computer.
Yeah. Yeah, I never like got into it, so it's really interested like hearing how like the whole language works. But I personally have not. I did learn C sharp first, which is also object oriented,
Mhm.
but it's still I don't know. I feel like the complexity of the syntax of Java is a bit higher compared to C sharp. The C sharp resembles JavaScript a lot, I feel like. So, but yeah, that was the language I learned first. And speaking of first languages, someone asked here in the chat, any advice for newbies learning HTML and CSS?
Yeah, I would say definitely like build like projects as much as you can, because I know like a lot of people when they're starting out, they're usually going to be following like a tutorial or maybe like something like Codecademy where you're kind of like coding alongside the lesson. But I think like really trying to just go out on your own, like without a tutorial, like after you've obviously watched like the fundamental stuff, like trying to go out and build your own just very simple website, even if it's like it looks terrible and it's like one page and everything, like still like building something is gonna help you so much because you'll realize what you don't know. Like there's always the joke in front end development where everybody's searching up how to center a div, for example. And that's like it's a joke that people make, but it's also important because like it's one of those things that if you are coding and you realize that like oh like this element is misaligned, how do I align it, and you have no idea how to do that, then you're gonna like go search it up on Google, like, okay, like how do I center this or align this to the left or make this look a certain way? And that's where like real learning happens because like you searching that and seeing the answer and implementing it and then seeing it visually, like we said, is what's gonna like lock that into memory. And as you build more and more of those type of projects, you're gonna like know so much more about front end development than if you were just to watch like tutorials.
Yeah, Sky, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree about tutorials. Like I really don't like tutorials. I just feel like they do too much for you. But when I follow a tutorial, I try to follow along, and then if they make something like red, I'll make it blue. Or I try to like test myself to see like how much I understand. And that's really helpful with HTML and CSS because there's probably a tutorial for like anything you want to do. But I feel like with those specifically, like if you're making like a landing page or a web page, like just try to draw out what you want to do. Like don't have any limits. Just say like, oh, I want something to fly across the screen or something. And then look up how to do that. And then I feel like just tackling problems and then finding the solutions for these little things really like build on top of each other when it comes to like your learning. And then soon enough, you'll be creating whatever you want in HTML and CSS. And you'll always still have to look things up. So don't think that that's weird. Obviously, like Ziad said about how to center a div, it's like you have so much going on up here. Sometimes some stuff is just leave it to Google to remember.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Just Google. It's also, I wanted to go deeper in it. Like that solves so many problems. Like when you are looking to solve something, the probability of someone having already answered that is really high. So if you're stuck with something, don't be afraid to, go on Google and just type in your question because that can really help you out. All right, so yeah, thank you for your answers. Is Leetcode a great idea? Yeah, would you like to like further elaborate on?
Yeah, someone
Yeah.
asked, is LeetCode is a great place? Is LeetCode a great place to practice HTML and CSS? Yeah, it's really not. LeetCode is more like for interview problems, like recursion and problem solving and data structures and stuff like that. I don't think you're ever going to use HTML and CSS in it. Like you'd always use like a scripting language like JavaScript or Java or Python or something like that. Yeah, as like the previous question to that was like, how do I come up with like things to build? Because I had mentioned like building side projects, and like I said, yeah, like I answered the person in the chat like just use ChatGPT or something and ask it like, what are some projects that I can build? Or you can go on Google and say see like what other people are building. Like even if you're copying someone else's project, like just you trying to build the same thing, but like in your own code is even that's going to be helpful. So give those strategies a shot, and I'm sure you'll do great.
Yeah. No, it's all about practice, as we were talking about earlier as well. Like the more you do something, the more repetitions you get with real projects, the more experience you get, the better you
Yep.
become. It's just a matter of practicing. That's all there is to it. Okay, so our next question is, are there any programming languages specifically designed for Internet of Things, IoT development?
Luis, do you know this one?
Um, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, there are languages that, like, I know, for example, on .NET, like, you have, like, the whole section for only IoT, but I never really got into to IoT like that. But I don't know if there are languages specifically designed for IoT development. Mostly they do object-oriented programming. It's mostly those languages that can be used for IoT development. So yeah, C Sharp, Java, I think some C++ plus plus as well. But I don't know if there are languages that are specifically made for the Internet of Things.
Yeah, I don't think there are. I think it's like usually there's going to be the popular language like Java or C Sharp, like you're saying, and then there's going to be like some library or framework on top of that that helps to do that. Like for example, the analogy that I'm thinking of is like Android development. Android development is like mostly Java, but you use like Android Studios, IDE, and all the libraries that come with that to basically turn Java into like an Android development kit. So I think it's probably the same way. Like you have a popular
Yeah.
language, and then someone like there's probably some libraries out there. I know like Amazon has like a whole like Internet of Things like section on AWS that someone could probably look into, but that's where I would start for sure.
Yeah. Sky, do you know anything
I
about it?
know. Yeah, when I looked up, because I was really interested, I mean, I still want to work for Tesla, but I really wanted to work for Tesla, and I was like seeing like, okay, what languages should I learn and everything, and they use specifically for hardware, so like basically everything that makes the car go. Other than like, obviously they use for the interface of the screen and stuff, like probably JavaScript, I'm assuming, something like that. But for everything else, like the hardware of the car, it's built in C, which is really like low level. So I thought that was interesting. So then I started to look up like what else was kind of built with C. And I think like mostly all of your electronics, like your TV, your alarm clocks, when we're talking about Internet of Things, like hardware and stuff, I guess. I never know like what we're kind of really talking about when we say Internet of Things because I just know it's like hardware that's connected. But like, and I think like Google Home and stuff, those are in, other than the interface, like the back end is usually in C because it's really low level and it's really fast.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I didn't know that, so thank you for the enlightenment. I learned something again. Every week, every time we have lives, I learn something. So everyone, please join in. Not just join, you learn something
Mhm.
every Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. Are there any more questions? Yeah, in the chat, we have a question. I want to specialize in AI. Which language should I focus more on? Yeah,
Yeah, I would say like definitely the Python I think is the most kind of commonly used language when it comes to working with data because like when you're in AI and like machine learning, you're always going to be dealing with like huge data sets and like manipulating them in some way to generate your model. So Python is good for that, but then also the developer support when it comes to machine learning models is mainly centered around Python. So like if you go on uh what was it called? Something face, Hugging Face. That's like the most popular like kind of GitHub for machine learning models. Like most of their libraries will be written in Python. So I would definitely get good with that. And honestly, Python is an easy language to learn. So that's what I'd recommend.
yeah, yeah. I definitely agree. Python. Some people, yeah, most people, they learn SQL with that as well for, yeah, for managing data and things like that. That's also important when you're learning, yeah, want to learn machine learning. I think that there are other languages that are used for that. I know we train machine learning models with .NET as well, but
Yeah.
it's there's so many languages that you can learn for that. It's basically, it has just to be you need a programming language and a query language, and you can get started with that. But yeah, as the ad said, Python is quite an easy option. Sky, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I looked into specializing in AI as well because it's like it's fascinating, obviously, right now in
Yeah,
machine learning, and I would say definitely Python just because it's more widely used and widely known. So if you're going to spend so much time learning one language for AI, I would say Python's a good bet. But if you want to be different and you want to maybe specialize in a language and get on top of like an up and coming language, maybe there's Julia as well. And I've heard a lot of really good things about Julia because it's very, very fast. And it's almost a syntax that's similar to like Java or C++, not so much Python. So if you're coming from Java or C++, one of the other languages, it's very similar, but it's like just as fast. They say it's like as fast as C. So it's really, really fast. So yeah, that's a cool one. But Python's going to be most general, and then Julia might be specialized. So you might be able to get in with like a startup or a company that's using that, um,
Is
like
Julia like
healthcare. A
a
lot of health
is
companies.
Julia like a strictly typed language, or is it more like a Python type of thing, or how?
Like a strongly typed language. I believe it's not.
Okay.
I think it's similar to like Python and
Mm,
Java, but it's just extremely fast.
cool.
So, but yeah, I don't think it's strongly typed.
It's pretty cool.
I'm not sure though. We could look that up. We're talking about Julia, Lucas, and then Python as well.
Yeah, those are the languages we are talking about. The topic is the different programming languages and their different uses. Okay, so we will get in the next question. It's can you tell us what your first languages you ever learned were and your most and least favorite? Most and least favorite language. I can start with this one. So, my first language, so my first programming language that I actually sat down and learned properly, that's C sharp. But the first language I ever wrote code in was R.
Mm,
I, it,
wow.
yeah, it, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
it was terrible. It was terrible. I do not recommend at all. And it was just so I had to do data analysis for like yeah, the thesis project. And yeah, I was asked the question, R or Python? And I thought, yeah, R, because I heard Python is difficult. It's really not that bad, but the people that I spoke to didn't have a technical background like that, and they just worked with the language, but they weren't programmers or anything like that.
Mm,
And yeah, I worked with R and I did data analysis. I basically camped Stack Overflow and stalked people to get answers, but it paid out in the end. But yeah, it's also my least favorite language of all the languages I worked with. I just don't like how you write R in R. I just don't.
yeah.
My favorite language, I think it's Python. It's like what Sky was talking about earlier. It's either Python or R. For me, it's Python. I like the fact that it's so easy. Like the syntax is so simple to me. Like when you read it, it's like you're just reading, English. So yeah, that's my story of my first language, my favorite and the least favorite language. Sky, would you like to get in next?
Yeah, I would say my first language. I played around with so many at the very beginning because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And like I said, I started with HTML and CSS just to like play around, and then I quickly did like a beginner overview of Python. But I still say that like my first language is Java because that's the one that I really like started to understand, like object oriented. Like I knew I was like fluent in the language when I was done with my courses. So that was my first language, I would say. And right now, my favorite is Java, just because if like whatever projects I'm thinking of, I just go straight to Java. It's just because I know the most about it. I know like all the ins and outs, but I would say, yeah, that's my favorite right now. Even though I want to move toward other languages for other projects in the future. And then my least favorite language, I've worked with a lot just because when you're in university, you have to work with the most random languages. Like I've worked with a lot of low level languages. And I would say my least favorite, I guess I'd have to say C. I mean, just because it's not very intuitive. It's not like your normal like object oriented programming. I can't really remember, but I think it's what do you call it when it's just line by line?
Mm,
Uh, uh,
like
Functional.
functional? Yeah,
I
functional
think so.
programming.
I think
Yeah.
C is functional, something like that. And there's just a lot of different nuances about C that aren't very like intuitive. So I guess that's my least favorite, even though I hate to like Bash C, and I think all the languages have a special thing about them.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
have.
mean, I would say my funny thing is like my first programming language wasn't really a programming language. It was like one of those like drag and drop type of things. If you guys remember like
Oh
Scratch
yeah.
and Snap and stuff. Like that was like the first time I was introduced to like if statements and loops and stuff like that. You would like make like little games with it if someone's not familiar. So it's like if you wanted to make like a soccer game or something, you would like drag an avatar and you would tell the avatar that like like if you're touching the soccer ball like make it go forward or something and it was like super fun because it introduced you to programming in a really fun way. um but then I would say like my first like actual like coding, like me like sitting and typing on a keyboard programming language, was definitely more of the web development stuff. So HTML, CSS, and then JavaScript as well. And even though I learned a lot of languages since then and like worked with a lot of different languages, I would still say my favorite is JavaScript. Like anytime I start like a side project, like I go JavaScript or TypeScript across the stack, like back end, front end, and everything. Like I really like TypeScript. And yeah, that's still what I use. Like even the company I work at is like fully JavaScript, JavaScript built. So it's fun. I love the community. I love the how like there's JavaScript's just been around for so long now that there's like lots of questions that have been answered. So yeah, that's definitely my favorite.
Yeah, a bit off topic. How many languages do you know?
Uh, a lot. I don't even know like the number. I think I've worked with like pretty much every like major language at some point. I don't know, but like I definitely haven't worked with like those niche ones like Julia or I think someone mentioned like Mojo or something like that. But I've worked with yeah like Java, JavaScript, C, C++, C Sharp. I've even worked with like Go. Go is like a really fun language, honestly, to play around with. Um, I've probably at least 10, like I would say. Like the thing is like I'm sure you guys know this as well. Like once you learn like a programming language, you kind of know the rest like intuitively. There's not like a huge barrier to entry. Like every language has if statements in some way. Like I didn't actually know R, but then someone who's like a couple years younger than me and still in college like came to me for help on like some R thing that he was working on, and I just like took one look at the file and I could like make out like what the heck is happening. And like once you just understand like how variables are declared and how functions are created and called, like you pretty much know the language.
Yeah, Sky.
Um, I would say I know a good amount of languages, but unlike Zia, they're not like your
Mhm.
main languages that you could probably get a job with. I know like all the weird, random, really, really old languages just because of college. They just make you learn the most useless things. But like assembly language, like I don't know when. I loved assembly language. If I can get a job coding in assembly language, I would do that. But I don't really think you can.
Yeah, no. Do you
But
know
yeah, I
X? Do you know x86 or ARM assembly? Those are like the.
I coded in MIPS.
Oh, okay, okay.
So so I did MIPS. It's like million instructions per second or
Mm-hmm.
something. MIPS, Scheme is a very low level language.
Mm,
Prolog is a very low level language.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and then I did C, C++, Python, Java, which Python they don't teach you at university basically at all. Even my data structures and algorithms class, I think we're going to be uh, doing that class in C++. So even after that, I don't think we ever use Python. But yeah, I know the most useless languages.
Yeah, no, but it definitely does go like that. Like you just learn one, like what Ziad mentioned earlier, and then the rest just comes intuitively. The
Yeah.
first one is probably your hardest one. That's what MZ Codes is saying in the chat. Okay, we're going quickly through the next question. What programming languages are popular for mobile app development?
Oh,
This
I
one
could
I don't know.
definitely. Yeah, I could take this one. So it's more about like frameworks rather than languages for mobile app development because I think like pretty much every language nowadays has like some framework or library. So there's kind of two answers to this. Like if you want to go fully like native, like you want to write like pure iOS app or a pure Android app. For Android, the framework that Google like claims as like the official one is Kotlin, which is I think it's like Java based basically, but it's just like a framework around Java. So Kotlin is definitely a huge one to learn if you're super into Android development. And then if you want to go pure iOS, they have something called Swift now, which is based on Objective C, I believe, which is based on C as well. So that's if you want to go fully native. But nowadays, most people are talking about cross-platform. So basically, like writing one code base for both an Android and an iOS app. And in that case, you have React Native is a huge one because it's based on React, and a lot of React developers just kind of like naturally learn how to code in React Native. It's literally like the exact same thing, but just different like HTML tags and stuff like that. And then someone mentioned Flutter in the chat as well. So Flutter is also I believe it's coded in something called Dart, which is similar to C Sharp, I believe. Dart is like this language that I think Google came out with at some point to try to compete with C Sharp from Microsoft. So yeah, like Flutter is a big one, but I would say like React Native definitely has like a grip on that market. So if you want to do mobile app development, I would definitely recommend React. Like I'm biased because I love React Native and most of my work is in React Native. But I definitely recommend that just because it's so easy to transition between web development and mobile development if you're already like a React kind of person. Since React Native is pretty similar and you can even sometimes like copy some like CSS and HTML work from web over to mobile.
Yeah. Yeah, Sky, do you know anything about mobile app development? I
No,
definitely don't. I'm
Zia,
asking you.
yeah, he stole the show with that. If I wish I was writing all that down, but definitely listen to Zia. Don't listen to me on mobile development.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, it's definitely his wheelhouse.
the lives are recorded, so you can always go back and,
Oh, true. I'm gonna have to
yeah,
rewatch this.
yeah, definitely. So, yeah, the next question, which programming languages are commonly used in game development? I can start with this one. So, for game development, you usually are looking at object-oriented programming. So, not a lot of functional programming goes in it because you are working with like, yeah, it's like classes and objects. So, if you look at like Unity engine, it's just creating objects. You really need to understand how that works. But yeah, you can think of languages like C Sharp, plus Java. Java is a bit older though. I don't think it's commonly used nowadays for game development. It is still used, but there are, a larger variety of languages. So yeah, those are like the main languages used for game development.
Yeah.
Do you guys have anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I only did game development like in college, kind of like for classes, and it was mostly like Unity and C++ plus plus and stuff like that. So I don't have a ton of experience, but I know like learning the engines is very important. Like being comfortable working with Unity or Unreal Engine makes you very competitive for like professional jobs in that industry. So like if I were to need to learn it, I'd approach it similar to like any of the other programming languages or concepts that I mentioned earlier, like watch some tutorials and then try to build your own thing to see like whether you like it or how good you are with it and learn from there.
Yeah, thank you. Sky, anything?
I don't have too much to add, but I know I've heard a ton about like the Unreal Engine and Unity Engine. I know those are really cool for. I feel like those are. I haven't used them, but I've heard they're like easier to use and like start. Like there's a lot of like startups using those. There's actually a video game coming out, and it's I don't know what it's called. I forget. It's called like something 10 or something. It's about Bible times. It's based in Israel in the BC times, but it's basically like this startup of this small group of people that were just like, we want to like bring this to life. And it looks amazing. And I can't believe they use like those engines to just like kind of simply like put it all together. It makes me want to like do game development now.
Uh,
But yeah, it seems like really, really cool. And but I don't have too much
yeah,
to
they
add.
make
Just
crazy stuff.
yeah.
Sorry, yeah. No, I was just gonna say it amazes me, you know. I played a lot of video games growing up. So yeah, whenever I do see like the technology behind it, and it always amazes me.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have about 15 minutes left for our live. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, please drop them in the chat. And yeah, we're here every week on
We actually
Wednesday.
had one
Yeah.
question that
Oh,
popped up. Someone was asking us to basically say React versus Angular versus Vue and do like either pros and cons or like compare and contrast. Um, so I can kind of start if you guys want. I've worked with React and Vue and a little bit of Angular, and I will say that like the thing is, if you try to draw a pros and cons list between those frameworks and libraries, you're going to end up actually kind of like evening out. There's just some pros of React that Angular doesn't have, and some things that Angular has that Vue doesn't have. But what I want to focus on mainly is just like the community aspect of each of those libraries, and just point out that like React's dominance over the last like decade or so, in terms of like when startups are coming out, like what language do they use and what libraries do they use, is mainly because of the community that's like behind it, I believe. Like when you just have so many people that are developers in the space and so many like open source libraries that have been created and so many questions that have been answered, that's really when you have like a powerful library because now as like a React developer, like any issue I run into, like there's someone that has faced it. Any issue that I discover, like as soon as I raise that question on Stack Overflow, it'll be answered within like 5 minutes, just because the community is so massive, and there's always people that are out there like willing to help. When I worked with Vue, like Angular has a big community as well, but especially when I worked with Vue, I just didn't feel the same level of like tenacity in terms of question answering and stuff like that. And I think that's mainly because like even though people who use Vue are like obviously they're very passionate and stuff, there's just not like as much of a there's not as big of a community. So I think that really makes things, like just lean towards React a little bit more when like thinking about what language or library to use. That's in addition to the fact that most like companies like use React for their web and mobile development. Yeah.
yeah, great answer. Thank you for answering the question in the chat. Again, if you have more questions, please drop them in the chat. Um, Sky, was there anything you wanted to add on that, by the way, before I move to the next question?
I don't have the most experience with those, but I would just say, just like how Ziad said, there's the pros and cons probably even out. Um, I guess it just depends on like what you're looking to do, and then if you're looking to work for a specific company, then maybe taking a look at like what they're using. Um, and I mean, yeah, there's always pros and cons, even if one's more popular than another. If you work on the language like Vue or whichever one that isn't as popular, maybe that will give you an upper hand to work for like, a startup that really needs your help with that or something. So there's probably pros and cons that, like Ziad said, like just even each other out.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you. So the next question on the list, what are some programming languages commonly used for machine learning and AI? Sky, would you like to go first for this one?
Yeah, just the basic ones. Like Python is going to be the most popular one. So if you're just learning and trying to figure out AI and machine learning, almost every book you read about machine learning or AI is probably going to be using Python. So you're going to get a lot more help with that one. I know there's some other languages, like I said earlier, Julia is a really cool one. So if you're looking to start something new and maybe get ahead of the curve and get on like a language that might be more popular coming up, then Julia would be cool. But there's not very many resources for Julia. Like you're not going to be able to go into a bookstore and find a book. I mean, there's one. It's the I can't remember the brand of books. They have like the animals on the front. Like for Python, I think they have the rat or something.
Yeah.
You can get one book on Julia, I think, in that brand, but yeah, Python's going to be your best bet if you're just getting into like AI and machine learning.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Again, it's a pretty easy language to learn if you have no coding background as a first language. I think it's pretty simple compared to what else there are. I heard horror stories though, people saying, "Yeah, I learned Python first and then I wanted to learn C++ plus plus, and it was really hard." I mean, yeah, I can see that happening, but again, it's a matter of practicing and just writing code, and you'll get the hang of it. So yeah,
Hmm.
what is there anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I just want to mention what Sky was talking about. Like, there's a lot of those books that are out there. I think the machine learning one would, I think, has like the lizard on it. I think it's called data intensive something with machine learning or Python or something like that. So, data intensive something. Definitely look that up. I remember like hearing very good things. But in general, yeah, like reading into AI concepts and seeing like what articles are online and stuff like that is a very good like bet in terms of making sure that you stay up to date and relevant with these concepts.
Yeah, yeah, it is about staying up to date. It's in tech, in every field actually, but you have to keep yourself updated, otherwise you will
Mhm.
be outdated.
Yep.
Because sadly, there's no one that updates you, you know, you update yourself. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so we have like two questions left, so I think we will round up in these two questions. The first question is, well, there are three questions. Which programming languages are recommended for system level programming? I do not know anything about system level programming. Do you guys know?
I think that like in
Yeah.
general you're talking about like low level programming languages, and at that point I definitely recommend like the C and C++ type of languages. Those are definitely like the most popular in terms of system level. Like I've worked with a few like embedded engineers, and embedded engineers work like pretty close to the hardware, like as close to hardware as you can get without being like a fully hardware kind of developer. So and they were always using like C or C++ because of it just lets you like manipulate things like memory management and thread management and stuff like that, like much more fine tuned, much more ingrained, I guess. So yeah, you at that point you definitely need to be comfortable with C and C++. plus plus. And if you want to go even lower level than that, then some of the assembly stuff that Sky was mentioning earlier is definitely the route that you want to take.
Yeah, I didn't know you could go lower than sea level, but it's another, it's another. The sky. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean it's crazy to think about because there's such a huge gap between like C and just straight to assembly language. It's so crazy that they both, they all kind of accomplish the same thing. But yeah, I mean, if you haven't worked in assembly language, I would recommend it just because you learn about like the architecture of the computer and like what you're actually doing. Like when you're coding in assembly, the most that you can really do is like store your 32-bit answer or like store something in, I don't know, RAM, and then I can't remember all of it. But yeah, there's just so much going on, and it like teaches you actually like what the computer's doing in like binary.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, as far as like system programming, I don't even know what, like maybe creating an operating system, is that what system programming is?
Yeah,
I don't really
like
know what
you,
that is.
yeah, usually you're talking about like writing an OS for like a piece of hardware. So this is like someone working
Okay.
with like, like if you're building a camera system, for example, like you need to like write like an OS layer for that camera, for example, so that it can accept commands and signals and stuff like that. So, Yeah, it's
Oh,
usually I think like C and C++ plus plus and maybe some like assembly, but assembly is like very, very low level. So at that point people still write usually like some library or framework on top of that.
yeah. Assembly would be good if you want it to be like 1 gigabyte for your entire operating system. Like if you wanted to be like very compact, but
Yeah.
I think I've heard of C, people
Hmm.
creating operating systems in C a lot. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have two questions left, and this one, I'm pretty sure Ziyad or Sky, you guys know about this one. What are some programming languages useful for cybersecurity?
Hmm. Cybersecurity.
Or, sorry for interrupting you, you can also say what are languages hackers use? They just use SQL, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing about cybersecurity is that you're really dealing with like a wide variety of problems. So like you do need to have a wide variety of programming languages like at your disposal, I would say. But it is like usually at that level, you're still working with like the high level object oriented programming languages because you're like defining rules and like defining basically like gateways of like how your API should be accessed or like what type of JSON you can accept and stuff like that. So it is still like I would still say like knowing Java, knowing C Sharp and C++ plus plus is gonna be pretty important for those fields. But I will say though, like nowadays, especially, I know there's a lot of people that like specialize in cybersecurity or like they get like a lot of certificates and stuff like that. But in my experience, like working as a software engineer at most companies, like whether it's like Google or a startup or somewhere in between, every software engineer like has to worry about security to some extent. Like even at most companies now, like I was talking with a few friends, and it turned out like we all took like the same security training like stuff, regardless of what companies we were at. And that's because like a lot of companies want you to be like aware of security issues so that when you're writing code, even if it's like I'm adding a new endpoint or I'm working on a new screen for a website, like I need to be aware of like what potential security issues could be, so that I can like prevent them ahead of time. So that generally means like no, like every programming language you learn like has some security things around it that you should be aware of.
Yeah, it becomes more like a joint effort.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Sky?
Yeah, I agree with Zia. Just like when you're writing code, you want to make sure that it's secure and it's like on a good foundation and there's no cracks and backdoors, whatever. Um, but as far as like cybersecurity, I don't know if we're talking about like what language Norton is written in. I'm not too sure. I know the like Trojan horse virus and like a lot of your like malware is written in C. And I don't know if that's because malware is like as old as like the 80s. Like the Trojan horse, I think, was like, started attacking people in like the 90s or something in your emails. So I know it's written in C, but I don't really know. I just usually download like Norton antivirus and then I pray. And I don't open up bad emails.
Yeah. I heard like there was like this yeah, this malware, and you didn't even have to open it. Like they would just send it to you like in the form of like it can be anything. It can be a picture, for example, and you just open it and then it just enters your device just like that. So it's a matter of, questioning whether your friends are sending you messages with the virus in it. I'm just kidding.
That's why I love Apple
Yeah.
because Apple, like, they do these like bounties for
Yes.
finding like I don't know, like, cracks in their code or being able to like penetrate their cybersecurity with malware. Like you could, win like a bounty and it's like really expensive too. You could win like hundreds of thousands of dollars. But that's why you never like your safest devices are your Apple iPhone and your Mac. And anything else like Windows, like you really have to like use your own security and like software and everything to protect it. But yeah, I really appreciate that about Apple, and I think they approach it the right way too. They're like, they invite people to try to break their devices and try to find glitches and things because it just makes them better.
Yeah, well, guys,
Yeah.
if you want to get break in tech, you can go, attempt to hack Apple, and you'll get the bounty.
I think
You
the
definitely
bounty these
can. There's
days is
like,
like it's like $1 million or something. Like it's so high because it's so hard. Like nobody's actually like been able to crack it these days. I think if you manage to hack into iCloud, it's like $2 million or something. It's pretty high.
there's like whole startups that are just focusing on hacking
Yeah.
Apple phones.
Yeah, it's a good business model. Okay, so we're going to our last question, and that is, can you recommend any lesser known programming languages that serve specific purposes?
Yeah,
Julia?
definitely let Sky do this one since she
Yeah.
seems to know more niche languages.
Okay, what was the question? Lesser known languages that serve a purpose?
Yeah, like a specific purpose.
Oh gosh. I'll just go back to Julia just because it's on my mind. And it's so interesting. You guys really should look up Julia and everything they're doing with it. But I think it's making its break in mainly like healthcare software and hardware too. So they're using it for like it's just so fast, but it's still like object oriented. It's not too low of level. So there's still like all these things that you can do with it, and you can do like classes and objects. But in like the medical field, they're using it for like biochemistry research and stem cell research. They can basically like create like cells and recreate like pharmaceutical drugs and see the interactions, and it's just super super fast. And then I think you're also going to see, I really think it's going to start coming into like AI and machine learning too. I think Julia is going to be like a really big language because for specifically for like the robots, like the mechanical side of AI, like the robots that are going to be doing like your surgery or your eyelash extensions. If you've seen that on TikTok, they're doing like cosmetic stuff, which is crazy, I think. But yeah, I think Julia is a pretty niche one. It's very new. And then I mean, just like assembly language, it's like who's using assembly language? I don't know.
Yeah, good question. Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you for your answer. I'll go to this question in the chat real quick. So what's the best way to understand a programming language? We touched upon this. I think personally it's practicing. Yeah, touch upon this as well. Doing projects. That's like the best way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing side projects for sure, because you'll like, if you weren't here earlier, it's like about learning what you don't know, basically. Like once you have to search up how to make something look a certain way or how to solve a specific problem, and like you go through that active like method of searching for the answer, you're gonna start getting better and better over time at that programming language.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so that concludes our live for today. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Ziad and Sky, for joining. And thank you to everyone who joined. We are doing this every Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. Just join. There's always something new to learn. I learn stuff. Everyone learns. Learning is fun. It's a part of your development as well. Okay, thank you, guys. Do you have anything you would like to say?
Oh, thanks everyone for joining and asking awesome questions. We'll see you next week.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. See you.
No problem.